first strategic fear has finally arrived, and it isn't coming from NATO, Ukraine, or the West. It's coming from deep inside his strongest military partner, Iran. Because right now, Tehran, a city of nearly 10 million people, is staring directly at zero day, the moment when not a single drop of water will come out of the taps. 10 million people without water. 10 million people facing evacuation. And the Iranian government itself has publicly admitted it. The capital may soon be impossible to live in. Iran is plunging into what experts call water bankruptcy, the most severe water crisis the country has faced in modern history. For years, warnings were ignored, rivers dried, wells collapsed, lakes turned to salt. But the real shock came when Iran's own president, Masoud Peshkan, stood before the nation on November 6, 2025, and confessed openly, for the first time, that Tehran's water reserves had dropped so dangerously low that forced evacuation was now on the table. It was the first moment in the regime's history when the government admitted it might not be able to protect or even sustain its own capital. Those words triggered panic across the country, because a zero-day scenario doesn't just mean running out of water. It means the collapse of electricity, transportation, hospitals, industry, everything a capital city needs to function. Without water, hydroelectric plants fail. Without electricity, water cannot be pumped. Without pumps, taps run dry. Without water, hospitals cannot sterilize equipment. Intensive care units shut down, dialysis stops. Operating rooms fall silent. In Tehran, blackouts lasting up to 12 hours became normal. And every time the lights went out, the water stopped flowing. An entire metropolis was reduced to carrying buckets in the streets like a collapsing war zone. The terrifying part is that this disaster didn't happen overnight. It began years earlier, in 2021, when the first major protests erupted in Khuzestan, an oil-rich region where rivers dried up and animals died in the mud. People held signs that said, "I am thirsty." They weren't asking for political reform, they were begging for water. The regime responded with lethal force. Amnesty International documented deaths, injuries, and blindings. The message was brutal and clear. Those who protest for water will be punished. But water cannot be suppressed. And as the drought worsened, the crisis spread to Isfahan, where farmers protested on the dry bed of the Zayandeh-Rud River. Security forces stormed their camp, injuring over 100 people, and permanently blinding dozens. The regime silenced the farmers, but not the problem.
Iran, especially its capital Tehran, is facing an unprecedented water crisis. Tehran has been facing extreme drought for 6 consecutive years, putting more than 10 million people at risk.
Now, the population of the Iranian capital, Tehran, consumes around 3 million cubic meters of water every single day.
Running water, because I have been hearing from a lot of friends and family relatives that their water has been cut off since midnight to 7 a.m.
The real cause of Iran's water catastrophe was not nature alone. It was decades of corruption, mismanagement, and what experts call the water mafia, a powerful network of industrial and political interests that treated water as a private asset, diverting it to factories and steel giants instead of citizens and farmers. In Isfahan alone, nearly 40% of the city's water was redirected to a single IRGC-affiliated steel complex, while farmers watched their land turn to dust. At the same time, Iran launched a massive, reckless dam-building spree, over 600 dams, many built without science or planning, simply to enrich contractors tied to the Revolutionary Guards. These dams dried up rivers, poisoned water supplies, and destroyed ecosystems. The Got-Van Dam became the most infamous. It was built directly on a salt deposit. The moment its reservoir filled, the fresh water mixed with salt and destroyed vast areas of farmland downstream. Iran literally poisoned its own water lifeline. Now the consequences are everywhere. Tehran's underground aquifers, its hidden reservoirs, have been drained so aggressively that the land is sinking. Entire neighborhoods tilt, roads crack, gas pipelines are at risk of exploding. Iran is now one of the fastest sinking countries in the world, with some regions collapsing by up to 30 centimeters every year. Tehran, built on a fragile foundation, may soon be physically unsafe to live in. The government knows this. It is one of the reasons behind Peshkan's shocking admission that evacuating the capital might become necessary. Tehran's crisis is further magnified by the fate of Lake Urmia.
Our next story is from Iran. When a nation begins to pray for rain, you know the crisis has crossed a line. In Iran, that line is now a crack in the earth, widening every single day. Desperate for relief, Tehran has launched a dramatic gamble. Aircraft firing chemicals into the clouds, hoping to squeeze rain from an empty sky. Cloud seeding is part science, part leap of faith. And right now, Iran needs both. Our next report takes you inside a nation fighting for water, praying for rain, and racing against a drought that refuses to end.
Iran is holding its breath and looking to the sky, because when rain becomes a miracle, every cloud becomes a story. When a country begins to measure its future by the promise of rain clouds, you know the crisis has reached a breaking point. And right now, Iran is living on a countdown, waiting for the sky to change its mind.
Once the largest salt lake in the Middle East, today it is 95% dead. What remains is an expanse of toxic salt that blows across farmlands and cities, killing crops and damaging lungs. Even if water returns, the soil is gone. This means millions will no longer be able to farm. Millions will no longer be able to live where they once did. Mass migration is becoming inevitable. For Vladimir Putin, this is a geopolitical disaster. His entire war effort in Ukraine depends on Iran's weapons, drones, and military supplies. The Shahed drones that strike Ukrainian cities come from Iran. The missiles he needs to pressure Kyiv come from Iran. But how can Iran manufacture weapons when factories shut down due to power failures? How can workers produce munitions when there's no water, no electricity, and entire cities face evacuation? How can a regime support a foreign war when it cannot supply water to its own capital? This is why Tehran's zero day is Putin's nightmare. He has relied on Iran as his most important ally under Western sanctions, but a regime fighting its own population, a regime facing mass uprisings over water.
Iran is grappling with its worst water crisis in decades, with officials warning that Tehran, a city of more than 10 million people, may soon be uninhabitable if the drought continues. President Masoud Peshkan cautioned that if rainfall does not arrive by December, the government must start rationing water in Tehran, and even then, citizens may still need to evacuate the city. But Iran's water crisis is not solely the result of low rainfall. Decades of mismanagement, including overbuilding of dams, illegal well drilling.
A regime watching its land sink and its cities die is not a reliable partner. It is a collapsing state. Experts now see only three possible futures for Iran. The first is controlled internal displacement, forced evacuations, social chaos, and millions of people moving from city to city. The second is political surrender. Tehran may be forced to seek Western water technology, which means giving up nuclear ambitions and distancing itself from Moscow. The third is total systemic collapse, a revolution triggered not by ideology, but by thirst. Whatever path Iran takes, one truth stands above all others. The regime has fought protests, fought sanctions, and fought dissent, but it cannot fight nature itself. The dried rivers, poisoned dams, collapsing land, and a capital on the edge of zero day mark the beginning of a crisis no regime can escape, not even with force. And now, Iran's internal collapse threatens to reshape the entire geopolitical map, including the future of Putin's war, the stability of the Middle East, and the fate of millions inside Tehran, who may soon face the unthinkable life without water. Thank you for watching. And don't forget to subscribe us for more military updates.